On a quiet spring afternoon in 2001, in the small rural town of Skidmore, Missouri, a young man named Branson Perry seemed to vanish into thin air. His disappearance has haunted his family and baffled investigators for more than 2 decades. It remains one of the strangest and most frustrating unsolved cases in America, one marked by bizarre circumstances, chilling coincidences, and more questions than answers. To this day, not a single confirmed trace of Branson has ever been found, leaving both his loved ones and true crime followers grasping for any explanation that might shed light on what happened to him. Branson Kane Perry was born in February 1981. He was 20 years old when he disappeared, living in Skidmore, a small farming community with fewer than 300 residents. If Skidmore sounds familiar, that's because it has a notorious history. This is the same town where Ken Rex McElroy, the so-called town bully, was gunned down in broad daylight in 1981, as dozens of townspeople looked on, and yet no one ever admitted to seeing who pulled the trigger. That case has long overshadowed Skidmore's reputation, giving the town an eerie notoriety. Against this backdrop, Branson's disappearance seemed to cement Skidmore's dark legacy as a place of mystery and unspoken truths. Branson was known as a kind-hearted, energetic young man with a playful sense of humor. He was close to his family, especially his mother, Becky Perry, and had a wide circle of friends. But his life hadn't been easy. He was dealing with health issues at the time, including complications from thyroid problems, and he had recently returned to living at his grandmother's home after spending time with friends. Despite these challenges, those who knew him said Branson was optimistic, motivated, and full of life. He had dreams of the future, including the hope of starting a family of his own someday. No one who knew him could have imagined that April of 2001 would be the last time anyone would ever see him. On April 11, 2001, Branson was at his grandmother's house, where he was living at the time. His father was scheduled to come home from the hospital after undergoing surgery, and Branson wanted to get the place in order. A friend had come over to help him clean and prepare. Everything about the day seemed normal, routine. However, around mid-afternoon, something unusual occurred. Branson told his friend he was going outside to put jumper cables away in the shed. It was a simple, ordinary task. He walked out the front door and never came back. At first, no one thought much of it. Maybe Branson had gone to visit a neighbor or taken a quick walk. But when hours passed and he didn't return, concern began to set in. His grandmother, his friend, and eventually his mother realized that something was very wrong. Branson's car was still in the driveway. His wallet, his keys, and his personal belongings were inside the house. It was as though he had walked out to complete a quick chore and then simply evaporated. The initial search for Branson turned up no trace of him. Friends, neighbors, and local law enforcement scoured the area. Dogs were brought in. Helicopters flew overhead. Fields, woods, and surrounding properties were combed for any sign, but there was nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no personal effects, no signs of struggle. It was as though the earth had swallowed him whole. Investigators were left with almost no evidence to guide their search. Rumors began to swirl, and they only intensified as the days stretched into weeks. Some speculated that Branson had been kidnapped. Others whispered that he may have been caught up in drugs, though his family insisted he was not involved in anything dangerous. Another theory suggested that foul play might have been at work, possibly involving someone close to him. But with no witnesses, no evidence, and no clear leads, investigators could do little more than chase shadows. One of the strangest details to emerge was the fact that Skidmore already had such a dark reputation. The murder of Ken Rex McElroy decades earlier had left scars on the town's collective conscience. Now, with Branson's disappearance, locals couldn't shake the feeling that Skidmore was once again hiding a sinister secret. Some even speculated that the community's silence in the McElroy case set a precedent, one where people knew more than they were willing to say. Could Branson's disappearance have been the result of a crime that, once again, people were too afraid to speak about? Investigators have explored many leads over the years. One suspect was Jack Wayne Rogers, a preacher from nearby Fulton, Missouri. He was convicted in 2003 of assault, sexual misconduct, and possessing disturbing materials, including writings about torture. Authorities considered Rogers as a possible connection to Branson's disappearance, but no evidence linked him directly to Branson. This investigation, like many others, ended without resolution. Branson's mother, Becky Perry, became his unwavering advocate, speaking to the media, organizing searches, and pushing law enforcement to find him. Despite hope fading, she never believed he left on his own accord, convinced someone took him and knows the truth. Tragically, Becky passed away in 2011 without learning what happened to Branson, leaving a hole in the family's fight for justice. Branson's case is haunting due to the lack of resolution. Unlike many missing persons cases with evidence, Branson's case lacks any trace, leaving people unsettled. How did a healthy young man vanish without a trace? The case has gained national attention, sparking interest from amateur sleuths and online communities. Each retelling of the story brings new theories, some pointing to individuals in town with questionable reputations, others suggesting accidental danger or false pretenses. Despite speculation, the truth remains elusive. Today, more than 20 years later, Branson Perry's disappearance remains one of Missouri's most confounding cold cases. His family, though smaller now with the passing of his mother, continues to hope that someone will come forward with information. Law enforcement has repeatedly urged the public to share anything they know, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. Because in cases like this, even the smallest detail can break things wide open. The disappearance of Branson Perry is more than just a local mystery. It is a reminder of how fragile life is and how quickly a person can be erased from the world without a trace. For the people of Skidmore, Branson's case remains a shadow over the town's already troubled history. For the rest of us, it is a cautionary tale about the unanswered questions that linger long after the headlines fade. Branson Perry would be in his 40s today. His family deserves answers. His community deserves closure. And above all, Branson himself deserves justice. Somewhere, someone knows what happened on that April afternoon in 2001. Until they speak, his story will remain a haunting mystery. If you know anything about the disappearance of Branson Perry, authorities encourage you to come forward. Even after all these years, a single piece of information could finally provide the answers his family has been searching for. Thank you for watching this story. If you found it compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into mysteries and true crime cases. And as always, stay curious and stay safe.